Your turn to do the intro.
No, you said you wanted to do it.
We're back.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Harshie podcast.
Ocho.
Oh, you just can't help yourself, can you?
I can't. I'm an immature kid at heart.
You are immature. What did I tell you today in text was you're dorky funny.
It was pretty funny while I was texting you, though.
I don't even remember because we text so much today because it was the only way that we could have an uninterrupted conversation today was texting.
It was true.
Mm-hmm.
That happens when you're a parent.
Especially of 6 children.
Oh my gosh. The interruptions are
endless.
Incessant.
Yeah. Constant.
Mom,
So
dad, mom, dad. Shut up!
That's what you're thinking in your head. Usually it's, what do you need? What? Okay, can you guys just give us 5 minutes? I've even been known to set the timer before. No questions for this amount of time. And they're like fiending. They're like little fiends just like waiting to ask their questions.
They're twitching.
And they are. And they're like building up until the timer's gone off before.
Beads of sweat start building up on their forehead. They start hyperventilating. Nope. I got 11 more seconds.
You know, and you milk those 11 seconds, right?
I do.
One trick that we do when they're asking questions literally all day long is you can only ask a question if you write it down and you offer to do something in return for what you're asking for. So mom always sweep the family room if I can have a turn on the computer or whatever it is. So that helps a lot too, actually, because we get things done in return and they get what they want, and it's not constant. They have to be more mindful actually of what they're asking. Should I turn this into like this positive? They have to be more mindful, and it's child-led learning. It's an organic attachment way of parenting. Not really.
Not
Maybe.
me. I tell them next person asks me a question is folding a load of laundry upstairs.
Or changing a poopy diaper.
Oh yeah, I do pull that card.
All right. Well, let's get into this because it might be a little bit long. So thank you to everyone who has listened to our first 5 birth experiences, the first 4 on the Birth Hours podcast, and number 5 last week on our podcast. And we have one more to share. And so we're going to share that this week. Our 6th baby, who has been nicknamed BeardBaby, which we'll get into why that is in a minute.
Yes.
But we'll pick up a little bit where we left off last time. We had the bull, our 5th baby, and we moved to that little Texas town where you had your office,
Mm-hmm.
our office,
Texas.
Our office. It was so funny. People would say, "Are you his secretary?" What? I just blank stare, you guys. No, I am 50% owner of this business. Thank you very much.
Yeah, people ask me that too. So is your wife your receptionist? Like, no, I'd consider more of the office manager, part owner, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So we lived there for 2.5 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah, about 2.5 years.
But after we had our 5th baby, as you heard in our last episode, it was a very trying time for us. The pregnancy was very long. The birth was very difficult. The postpartum was difficult as well. And he was around 6 months old when we moved to this little Texas town. And I realized at some point after that move that I had pretty bad postpartum depression. I had insomnia. I wasn't sleeping at nights. I would just sit up all night and work on Birth Off Fear, to be honest. Hours and hours spent on that. Yeah, on the blog, the website, the social media. Too much time, too much attention, too much energy, honestly. And things got better for our family. Things got better financially for that time period. But I just was not finding my way with 5 kids the way I did with 4 kids. Man, I had that down. That was what I call my sweet spot of motherhood. I just felt like I knew everything. I had this healing birth. I had this really easy baby, and breastfeeding was finally going well. And, I could get out with 4 kids and do things still. And then I had this 5th baby and I was like, I know nothing. I don't know what's going on. It was really, really humbling. And as he got older, it continued to be humbling because he's what you refer to as an empathic spirited child, I would say. Man, that's intense.
Yes.
Yeah. So super humbling all around our life, pregnancy, the birth, the postpartum, the child, everything. Very, very humbling. And we decided, even though I felt like there was another little boy and a little girl for our family after our 4th, after this birth experience and everything surrounding it, I was like, and done. And we're done. Like, no more. That's enough, and after 2.5 years, like I was saying, we moved to Austin.
We did. Yeah. Well, what happens, you started speaking.
Yeah.
You started speaking for other events and
those that shall not be named.
Yeah, we will not give them any added publicity. But anyways, you started speaking, and at this one event you spoke at, we were eating dinner or something like that.
Yeah, I had spoke at about 6 events that year, and I just didn't like how it was going. I didn't like the vibe of the events. I didn't like the energy. I loved meeting people in person that had been moved or helped or supported by Birth Without Fear. And it was amazing to have the face-to-face connection. It's really is what has kept me going with social media. Mm-hmm. And I wanted that more. And I wanted more healing to happen and face-to-face connection to happen and inspiration to happen. So I sat down with you and said, this is what we're going to do. And you were like, okay. And I laid out for you exactly how I wanted to do these events. And nobody was doing events like it at the time. And it was after the Dallas conference. So we had one conference.
That's right.
So I pulled all these pieces together to do a 1-day event that I felt would give just inspiration, information, and a lot of just healing and support. And I said, I'm going to do 8 to 10 of them. I'm going to hire an event planner. This is what we're going to do. And you looked at me and you said, I don't know about that, January. And what do I do when somebody tells me I can't do something? I was like, no, this is what I'm going to do. And you said, well, why don't we start with like 2 or 3? And I said 8 to 10. And so that's exactly what I did. I did what I said. And that's how that got started. But yeah, with the traveling, it was 4 to 5 hour drive just to the airport.
Yeah, because you either had to go to Amarillo
and to fly in,
drive 2 hours there, and then you fly to Dallas, and then fly from Dallas to wherever.
Yeah.
Or you drive to Dallas, which is a 4 hour drive.
Which was actually better. But yeah.
Yeah. So it was a pretty crazy travel experience, and I was actually thinking that your events were going to be like the Dallas conference, because that was really complicated to plan out. So that's kind of what I had in my mind.
Yeah, it was a 2-day conference with a lot of speakers and vendors and whatnot. So
yeah, but I had a few months earlier, I'd put the practice up for sale just for the heck of it to see if there would be any interest. And so everything was just coming together for us to move. So we moved to Austin, the Austin area, the end of November, beginning of December 2013.
Right. And it was interesting because during this time when we were still living in Childress, we did get pregnant. And
we did.
I didn't know it. We had taken all the kids. We had to drive an hour away to go to some restaurants. I mean, when we say we lived in a drive-through town, we mean it. And so we had driven an hour into a little town in Oklahoma, Oklahoma?
Altus,
Oklahoma. Oh my gosh. And we took the kids to the buffet, and I remember that I went to the restroom there and I was spotting, and I thought that's kind of weird. And my cycles are really irregular. So just figured my period was like late as usual, and I thought I was starting my period and didn't think much of it, but I didn't start my period until a few days later. which, is not normal for me. And so I realized shortly into this that it was not a normal period. And it got very heavy, very, very heavy, and a lot of cramping. And then I started passing clots. And if any of you have are sensitive to listening about loss right now, I guess I should have already said this, but I'll just pause right now and just say if you need to skip ahead a couple minutes, you can. But anyways, so I started passing clots, and I just realized that something just was off. And I don't get positive pregnancy tests early on, and I wasn't even testing because we weren't trying or anything.
No.
But I know I just realized that this was a very early miscarriage type of situation, and I felt broken. I had never really. It's really hard to understand what it feels like emotionally, mentally, to go through a miscarriage. Yes, even early on, until you're going through it. And I felt ashamed. I felt like I must have done something wrong. I felt that my body must be broken, that I must have been getting old, or I did something wrong, or I was drinking too much coffee, or I don't know, like just all these things going through my mind. And it was, a really hard couple days. And our oldest daughter at the time was, I would say, around 10. And she could just tell something was up. Yeah. And she asked me, and I was honest with her because she's a 10-year-old girl, and we need to be open and honest about our bodies, respectfully so, depending on the age of our children. And I told her because, she's getting to the age where she was going to start dealing with these kind of things as far as like getting periods and whatnot. And so I told her what was going on, and she was confused, and she was trying to understand that I was pregnant, but then I wasn't going to be. And she was trying to wrap her mind around that. So after a few days, she asked if we could go grab coffee together. And there was one little coffee shop in town, which was my saving grace living there. Actually, it was a boutique and a coffee shop. So we did. We went and we sat down and talked. And she asked me, questions. And she asked, so this would have been a baby sister or brother. And I said, well, yeah, in about 9 months, give or take. But it's so early on, and but it was interesting because I was trying to excuse it away, and she wasn't having it. She's like, well, but still, this would have been a baby brother or sister. And I said, yes. And she told me that made her sad, that was happening, and that she was sorry that was happening to me. And it was amazing to me that my 10-year-old was making space to process this miscarriage. And she asked if we could name the baby all on her own, and which surprised me because that's not something I would have done, not for an early miscarriage. And I said, sure, if you'd like to, go ahead. And she thought about it for a moment, and she said, I would like to name this baby Dakota. And I said, okay. And I don't know where she got that name from because we never discussed that name before. And she asked if she could look around the shop. We both have, of course, had tears in our eyes at this point. And she hates crying in public. But she asked if she could look around the boutique. And I said, sure. And she came back with this little figurine doll and said, I would like to buy this to represent Dakota for us. Can you believe that?
With her, yeah, I can. She's...
And this 10-year-old child just completely making space to process this miscarriage. I was just like, what? I mean, she kind of blew my mind. Yeah. Because I would have, believe it or not, with how much I deal with people's feelings and emotions and healing and processing, I would have wanted to just kind of push this under the rug, not deal with it, to be honest. And so that experience with her, of course, made me think on it more, made me process on it more, and it opened up a conversation for you and I. Mm-hmm. That, hey, this would have been another little Hershey baby. And I remember us sitting down at that same coffee shop and us talking about it. And I asked you, what do you think about that? You're like, well, we make really cute babies. So.
Yeah, I actually found myself being disappointed that you thought you were pregnant and lost the baby early on. I didn't think that something that early would register in my mind, or that because whenever we've had a baby, it doesn't seem real until you birth the baby and the baby's there screaming and crying. So, but for me, I felt disappointed and thinking, well, I guess maybe there is another little Hershey twerp waiting to come to our family. So
you can joke all you want, but it made me fall in love with you even more in that moment.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we decided to be open to having another baby. So we had moved and we were in Austin, and you were commuting back and forth. People don't know this, but for the first 5 months that we lived in the Austin area, you commuted during the week back to see your patients.
Yeah. Where we were living it was about a 5.5 hour drive back to Childress. And so I would get up about 4 a.m. on Tuesdays, get myself dressed, eat, and I would head off to Childress, drive there, get there late morning, around 9:30, 10-ish. And I would see patients all day. And I typically didn't sleep too well the night before I left. So by the time 8 p.m. rolled around, I was ready to pass out. So I'd watch some Shark Tank on the CNBC and then go to sleep. And then I would see patients all day Wednesday, and then I would stay there Thursday until about midday, and then I would drive home. And I did that every week for 5 months. First month we did that was kind of crazy because it was bad ice storm, so I had a fun experience.
In the beginning, it was rough transition.
But end up having interest in another chiropractor wanting to buy the practice, and he did. And so
okay, but side note on that, everyone told us you're not going to be able to sell your practice. This is a tiny town. You won't be able to sell it. And again, when somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm like, oh, that's really cute. Watch me. Yeah,
well, and also too, the way I set up the practice, it was, if there are any chiropractors listening, it was as minimalist as you can get. 100% cash practice.
Low overhead.
Yeah, I literally only accepted cash or checks there. I mean, you
well, it was awesome though, because this town is like 30 years behind the time, and in some ways that's really awful, and other ways it's great. Like, people still write checks there all the time.
Yeah, you can go out to dinner and use a check to pay for it. I mean, I don't even remember my parents doing that when I was a kid.
Yeah,
so
but everybody knows you. They know where you live. They'll come collect.
They literally knew where I lived. But so yeah, it was super easy, straight up. I had a great hours, and
was it super?
It was super duper.
Super.
Yeah. So yeah, it was fantastic, and this doc
was it fantastic?
Are you making fun of me?
Yes.
I get the hint you're making fun of me.
Your choice of words are amusing me.
Hardy har har.
So we sold the practice.
It was a really stupendous practice. Fabulous, marvelous.
Oh man.
What other adjectives can we use?
I don't know, but I love it. Super. Super.
Anywho.
Yeah, so we sold the practice, and we Birth That Fear took off in the events and whatnot. And in the meantime, since this is technically supposed to be about our birth experiences, we actually were not getting pregnant, and we always had been blessed to get pregnant pretty easily. And 7 months went by, and every month it was like, am I pregnant or am I going to start my period? Mm-hmm. And then I would start my period, and it was this mix of emotions between, well, that's disappointing because we were, we were hoping to have another baby, to, okay, well, that's one more month I don't need to worry about where I'm going to birth and who I'm going to hire and how long this pregnancy is going to be, and I can open another bottle of wine. It was very mixed emotions. So when we sold
you were still Mormon at the time. Very naughty. Drinking wine.
Naughty Mormons are the best kind of Mormons.
I'm going to have to report you to the local bishop.
That's okay. They're still trying to get a hold of us.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they are.
So the practice. Stop. People can listen to the Mormon podcast. We need to focus.
Real quick, side note. A couple weeks ago, I got a call from some guy in a Mormon ward out in Scottsdale that we were in 10 years ago, asking if I was going to go to church, if I was going to be in church on Sunday. I'm like, I haven't lived in Arizona 9 years. I don't even know how you got my number. Like, what is going on here?
I got 4 emails in the last 2 weeks, and I emailed one back and said, we're no longer active and we don't go to your ward, and can you please remove us from your records? And he emailed back and said, yes, can you please give me your updated address so I can transfer your records to your appropriate ward? And I said no. Just one word. I said no. And I blocked his email because I'm like, oh my God, stop emailing me. Like when I sent this email that said no, I kind of chuckled because they go crazy if they cannot check you off a list and like send the paperwork appropriate places. Like, I know they're going nuts. They're probably just going to beg us to have our records removed at some point because they just don't know where to send our stuff to.
You're like bill collectors trying to collect on
I know.
late
Okay.
payment.
We need to focus. So
okay.
If you want to,
anyways, I sold the practice.
Yeah. And then we celebrated with vodka.
Well, and I grew a beard.
Oh, no. You grew the beard. And we got pregnant.
Right.
And then we celebrated with vodka, not knowing. I think I was already pregnant.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And
we were doing some naked celebrating.
We were doing naked cardio celebrating.
Naked cardio. Quite a bit of naked cardio.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And
definitely
a lot of happy times. Happy times. And it was super. So we had celebrated
super duper
this night with a lot of grapefruit vodka. And the next morning I was really, really, really sick. And I did get a stomach virus because our one of our daughters had one earlier in the week. But this was bad. This was like, I couldn't move. I couldn't stop throwing up. It was awful. And then 2 days later, I had an event. And so I was so sick for 2 days. And I had been up all night sick. And I finally fell asleep at I stopped throwing up at midnight. I fell asleep a little after that. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. and go to the airport. So I am recovering or trying to recover from this stomach virus plus alcohol, and didn't know I was pregnant. I know this sounds awful, but when you don't know, you don't know. So I got on this plane. I flew to Columbus, Ohio, and we got the event ready. It was an awesome event, actually. And I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning. I still wasn't feeling well. I was on the end of it, and I wouldn't go near any babies or anything during this event because it was done. I wasn't contagious or anything, but I still felt awful, and I just want to make sure. But I did this event with was that the first year I went to Columbus or the second?
The first year.
So we had how many people there?
It was about 200.
Yeah, so 200 people, speakers and vendors. It was an amazing event, and I was pale and bloated and deathly sick and pregnant, and no one knew any of it, and I didn't even know I was pregnant.
I was so worried. I'd see some pictures.
Oh,
people were posting
I barely
them
shared any photos from that event because I was so bloated and pale.
Oh yeah,
it was so bad.
I don't know. My wife is near death, and I'm thousands of miles away.
Yeah, this was back when I first started, where I would practically kill myself to go to an event. Now I'm not so much, and so I was talking to my event planner, and we were discussing it, and I was like, something's just off. And my periods have been so irregular, and I was so late, and maybe you're pregnant. I was like, no, I'm not. I cannot be pregnant. If I was pregnant, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have been drinking. I wouldn't have been I'm not, I'm supposed to be getting my period any moment. I came home from the event, and I was so glad to be home alive. So when we woke up, we took early morning flights this weekend. I don't do that anymore either. And I had to wake up at 4 a.m. the next morning after the event, after doing an event with 200 people, recovering from being sick. I rolled out of bed, got my stuff, walked downstairs, and met the people I was with. And just tears were just quietly streaming down my face. Totally not traumatic at all. Just tears. And I was like, let's just go. Let's just go. I was so bad. Great event. Bad weekend for me. Yeah. And I got home. And then all of our kids proceeded. 3 kids threw up within like 15 minutes of each other. And I didn't care because I was so happy to be feeling better myself and to be home. I'm like, I got it. I'll clean it. I did not care as long as it wasn't me.
Seriously, 15 minutes in the middle of the night. 3 of them threw up.
And so we got through that. And like a day or two later, I went grocery shopping. And I'm walking through the grocery store and I'm walking past the frozen food aisle. And I just stopped, backed up a few steps and looked over and thought, bagel bites. I could use some bagel bites right about now. Now, I haven't eaten bagel bites since I was a kid. I think bagel bites are yummy, disgusting. And yes, I said yummy, disgusting together. Not and. They're just yummy, disgusting. They're fabulous. And so I was like, that's weird. And then as I was walking through the grocery store, I was just craving everything. And when I get pregnant, I crave all the childhood foods. And we ate like shit. So I basically just crave a bunch of shitty food, standard American diet. And I realized after about a minute or two of this, well, oh crap. Wait, no, I'm pregnant. So I went over to the pregnancy test aisle, and got a pregnancy test. I'm like, I know I'm wasting my money because I already know I am. And, I finished grocery shopping, went home, took the test, and sure enough, it was positive. And I was like, what? And I was kind of shocked because, to be honest, I had really given up on the idea of us getting pregnant. I was like 7 months. We hadn't gotten pregnant. I just figured my body was done. Obviously, if I was celebrating, with vodka, I really didn't think we were having another baby. I thought we were done. I thought my body was like, no more. You're getting older. Like you've had a lot of babies. And so when I got this positive test, I was kind of shocked. Like, oh. It's like all these O's. I called a friend right away and told her I was pregnant as if I was, I don't know, in trouble. Like, I'm pregnant. She's like, well, how do you feel about that? And I said, well, excited, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. And she asked if I told you yet. I'm like, no, he's down the stairs with the kids. I don't want the kids to hear. I didn't want the kids to know for a while because of what happened the previous time. So I told you later, right?
Mm-hmm.
I came up to you and I said, I have something to
tell you.
It was
during the day. It was an afternoon.
Yeah. And I told you that we were pregnant. What'd you say? How'd you respond?
I think it was something like, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Like, it was not like we were using protection or trying to prevent or anything. So,
but it hadn't been happening either.
It hadn't been happening either. So it's like on one hand,
it was like, well, duh. We know how this happens.
Yeah. So yeah, on one hand, surprising. On the other hand, it wasn't. But it was still cool because we'd talked for years about having a big family anyway. So this kind of just fulfilled that thought, that frame of mind. All
right, so that kind of takes off from the last episode and leads us up to finally being pregnant with who was aptly named Beard Baby because
Beard Baby.
We had not gotten pregnant all this time, and then you grew a beard and boom, pregnant.
Yep.
So we didn't announce the pregnancy for a while. I traveled that year and I did events up to almost 20 weeks pregnant, and no one knew I was pregnant on social media, at events, anywhere. I wanted just to keep it to ourselves as long as possible. We told our kids, I would say around 13, 14 weeks. I can't remember. We told our kids then. I finished traveling for that year, and we only had one conference in the fall in Austin, a 2-day conference. And I was going to be about 33 weeks. So I knew at some point between the 19, 20 weeks to 33 weeks, I'd have to say something. So around 20 weeks, we went in for our anatomy scan, and we took all the kids with us. And my friend, who's also a photographer, Leilani Rogers, is local in Austin. She met us there. We had an ultrasound together. The kids really wanted to know what we were having because we hadn't found out.
Yeah, that's true.
Our previous 3 pregnancies was a surprise. But this one was so different. We were older. We had 5 children. Our kids were older and wanted to be more included in it. Mm-hmm. And they really wanted to know if they were having a baby sister or brother. And I was cool either way. I was a lot more laid back this time.
Yeah.
And we found out we were having a girl, which I wasn't too surprised because I knew we had another little boy and another little girl. And we had our boy and this our little girl. And our oldest daughter just cried for like 20 or 30 minutes. Really hit her, and Leilani took photos of the experience. I've actually never shared these photos anywhere. Mm-mm. I've never shared them on social media. They were just for our family, of all of our reactions to finding out what we're having. It was really fun.
The best one was our oldest son. He was look of
shocked
happiness.
Yeah, he was so sweet.
Yeah,
he's our little baby whisperer now.
Yeah, he is.
But yeah, it was really cool. So when we got pregnant, we hired midwives that we knew here in Austin, and my gut told me to hire an OB as well. And for those of you that have listened to our previous 5 birth experiences, might understand that that's not our norm. Mm-mm. I never hire OBs just from the beginning. It's actually quite unlike me. But something I do is, I listen to my gut. I listen to my instincts. And if my gut was telling me to hire an OB, that's what I was going to do. So I had co-care. We had co-care with midwives and OBs throughout the pregnancy. One OB that I knew here in Austin. And he was wonderful and respectful of us. He thought it was so great that I had 3 VBACs after 2 cesareans. And I remember one time during a prenatal visit with him, one of our first prenatal visits with him he said, "So you've had 3 VBACs after 2 C-sections?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Whatever birth you want, I'm here to support. Like, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's phenomenal." And I said to him, "Do you know what it took? Do you know what kind of fight it was to get to this point and to hear an OB say those words to me?" And he said, "Yeah, I bet."
Yeah.
But there we were. So I had fought to get there, and I was there. And he was super supportive. And it was always funny when I went into the office, you go into an OB's office, you wait to get taken back by, usually a nurse to do your blood pressure and weigh you and all that. And they would take me back to the scale, and I would just look at it and look at them. And I was like, "What? Well, we need to weigh you, Mrs. Harshey." "No, you don't." "Yes, we do." And I was like, "Listen, you see all this? I've worked a long time to be good with this, and getting on that scale is going to do nothing positive and not going to give you any information you need right now." "I'll just write patient refuses." "Okay, whatever makes it work for you. But I'm not getting on that scale. There's no reason you need to know my weight during this prenatal visit." "Okay, then." Pregnancy went really well. My blood pressure was always perfect. Everything was perfect.
Your vitals have always been
everything was great. I mean, being pregnant, especially towards the end, I used to ask my OB if I could have a pregnancy epidural.
Can I get a life epidural?
Can I get a life? Yeah, exactly. Life epidural. And he's like, "I'll let you know when I can figure that out." But
still no KY jelly.
No coconut oil, KY jelly. I'll take anything. And so throughout this pregnancy, we had been seeing our midwives as well, and our midwives just were not respecting me and our privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I hired them, I said, I've obviously been around this is my first rodeo, right? And I really just, it's an odd place to be known in the birth community, to be known in this niche, but to also be a pregnant woman myself. And I just wanted to be a pregnant woman, and I wanted privacy regarding my pregnancy, when I announced, what I announced. And unfortunately, that just was not respected. So by 33 weeks, that came to a head. And by 33 weeks, actually it was, I fired them.
Yeah. And as a healthcare practitioner myself, it is just mind-boggling that you even had to request that they keep your privacy sacred, because that's part of the law. What this midwife did in violating your privacy is against the law. We could have taken it all the way, and it caused a lot of problems for her because she violated HIPAA.
Yeah, but ain't nobody got time for that.
No, we didn't have time for that. But
so I fired them, and I told my OB, and he said, "You got to do what you have to do to feel safe and to have a good birth." And I was actually really pissed, and I was frustrated that here I am supporting everybody else, and I've never had a midwife assisted home birth, and that's what I wanted this time.
Yeah, isn't
that funny? That out of all of our births, they're all so unique, and we've never had a midwife assisted home birth.
No.
That's so weird.
And if truth be told, I never could picture us having a home birth, that pregnancy, with that particular set of midwives.
I know it just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah.
And so I was really upset. I was frustrated. I felt like my home birth was just off the table. And we knew 1000% we were not having another unassisted birth. That was never even an option this time.
Hell no.
And so, and isn't that interesting? A lot of people assumed we were going to have an unassisted birth. And just because one type of birth experience is right for one period in your life and one baby doesn't mean it always will be both ways. So
we got too old for that shit.
I talked to Leilani, actually. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we are. I talked to Leilani and I said, you know more midwives in the area than I do. You know me, what do you think? And she said, I was hoping you would ask, but I know these great midwives that I think that you would love. And so I called them, and then we went in and met with them, and we did. We love them. I still love them. Great. They were wonderful. And we hired them at 36 weeks, I want to say, officially.
Yeah, 36.
But I always go post-date, so we all knew that we probably had about 6 weeks to establish relationship and care. So we saw them like every week. And I continue seeing my OB. And we got to 40 weeks. I was hoping that our last baby would be like, so my water would break at 38 weeks and wake me up out of bed, and then I'd have contractions, and then I'd have this beautiful home birth. Nope. So got to 40 weeks, got to 41 weeks, got to 42 weeks. And at 42 and a half weeks, I had my weekly visit with our OB, and we went in, checked everything, had an ultrasound, of course, checked fluid levels, placenta, baby, me, and had that conversation of, what are we going to do? And he said, this is your normal. This isn't your first time. What are you thinking? And it was an interesting conversation. It was a completely different kind of dynamic and relationship because of my past experiences and my births and him knowing me and my history and what I wanted and how important it was to me to have autonomy, over and have a say, have options, and be supported and respected in my choices. And so we talked about it, and I was having contractions that day. And I said, well, I'm having contractions. Let's see if these pick up and see where it leads. And he said, okay, if anything changes at all, call me, and I said, okay. And I was still seeing my midwives too. So our midwives. So, I was in contact. We were in contact with everyone continuous, and then went home, and my contractions, they had picked up throughout the day. Remember, they picked up, we went to lunch. We went and got we went to a pho. How do you say it?
Pho.
We went and got pho. And they were picking up and picking up and picking up. And then by midnight, they pittered out. And I was like, gosh, not again. I had so much prodromal labor with our fifth. I was like, oh, here we go. Woke up the next morning and realized I was sick. And we shortly realized we had the flu. So our whole family, you guys.
The flu.
I was 42 and a half weeks pregnant and got the flu. And my family got the flu.
We all had it.
So I was like, okay, baby, you need to stay in for a few more days because I cannot have a baby while I have the flu. And 2 more days passed, and I woke up on a Sunday morning, 43 weeks on the dot, and went into what I call a full-on post a pregnant woman panic. Now, in the meantime, we had shared we were pregnant, but I didn't give anyone due dates because I go post dates, and I've gotten pushback for that before, and harassment for that before, actually. And so I just told people I was due like in that season, and nobody knew if we're having a girl or boy or anything. And so I woke up and I went into this full on panic of wanting to feel my baby move, and I couldn't feel her move. And I went downstairs and I drank some almond chocolate milk, and then I drank some juice, and then I laid on my left side and I was wiggling my belly and moving her around and trying to feel her move. And I want to do kick counts, and I couldn't feel her move. And I just freaked out. And I came back upstairs and you were asleep, and I was like, babe, I need you to wake up. I can't feel the baby move. And you were like, what? I was like, I can't feel the baby move. And you literally turned over, placed your hand on my belly. Yeah, I just felt her move. She's moving. No, she's not. No, she's not. How? If I can't feel her move, you can't feel her move. Remember? That's what I said. Yeah. And you touched my belly again, and you said, I just felt her move again. Can I go back to sleep?
I had the flu, mind you.
Yeah, we were sick.
It was hard just to even move my arm. That's how horrible I felt.
And I was like, oh, there she is. She probably have literally been sleeping.
Yeah.
Getting ready to, be birthed, literally, to come out of a, hopefully a vaginal canal and come earthside. And I'm like going crazy trying to wiggle her and wake her up. Well, during all this, I had texted my midwives and texted my OB, and I was then paying attention to her movements. They were still a little bit slow, and I knew that there was no way I was going to bed that night pregnant. Like hell to the no. She needed to be born, period. And I wasn't 37 weeks. I was post dates, and 42 and a half is my normal. So I was even post dates for myself. Yeah. And OB called me back, and he wasn't on call, so he hadn't seen my texts or whatnot. But he called me back, and I told him, how I was feeling, what happened, and that this baby needed to be born today. And he said, I support that decision. Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah,
obviously.
I think everyone did.
And I said, well, what do you think? What do you want to do? And he said, well, let's meet like in an hour over at my office. It's right next door to the hospital. Let's meet over at the office in an hour. Let's check on baby and let's discuss options. And I said, okay, great. So we had someone come watch the kids, and we got ourselves loaded up. We went to meet with our OB at his office. We met him outside. We walked in his office with him. You guys, this is a Sunday morning. Actually, as we were driving there, we were driving to meet our OB on a Sunday morning in his office early. It was early. Mm-hmm. And I'm texting the midwives to let them know what's going on. And I just stopped and I looked at you while you were driving. Yeah. And I said, this is how it should be. And you're like, what do you mean? I said, this is how care should be for all women in our country. Yeah. Why do we have to fight so hard to have this kind of support where everyone is working together for a healthy mom, mentally and physically healthy, mind you, and healthy baby, and everyone's on the same team. Everyone's working together with the same goals in mind. Guys, I don't suggest you have 6 kids to get that. We did. No. But we need to make that happen in our communities. We need to be talking about who the good care providers are. We need to be hiring them and not hiring the other ones. We need to fight for change, for the laws and in the hospital and, the kind of births that we want. Yeah. And it's hard. I know it's hard, but that's just the way it's always been for women, to be perfectly honest. We have to fight to have autonomy over our own bodies and to have rights and to be heard and to be respected. And so anyways, I finally had that, and it was amazing. It was this beautiful moment to have that at least once. And we got there, we went in with him, checked on baby. She's good. She's fine. She was just
hanging out.
Just hanging out. My fluids were a little bit lower than a few days before when I had seen him. So we discussed options, and he kept saying, well, if your cervix is favorable, we could start an induction. And I was like, what do you mean by favorable cervix? Just layman terms here. And he said, well, if you're dilated a little bit. And I'm like, nope, my cervix will be high and closed. And he said, January, this is your 6th baby in your 43 weeks. Can I check you? Because I hadn't been checked at all.
Right.
I don't feel it's necessary to have any cervical checks in pregnancy, barring certain circumstances, I guess.
Yeah.
So I hadn't been checked at all. And I was like, okay, sure. But I'm telling you. He's like, oh, okay. And he checked me and he's like, where is your cervix? I'm like, high up. And he said, you're not even dilated a fingertip. I'm like, I know, I told you. And he's like, I don't understand. You're literally 43 weeks with your 6th baby. I'm like, this is how my body works. Like, I'm not a statistic. This is how my body works. He's like, okay, well, he's like, I don't feel comfortable just inducing you. And then we didn't feel comfortable breaking my water to start anything because that could have a possible risk of cord prolapse. Like, we went through everything. And I'm, you were asking questions and I was just like, I'm propped up on this table with goop on my belly. I've just been checked and I'm thinking about how in any kind of induced labor will go for me based off of my body, my previous experiences. And I knew that I would end up in a very long labor and I would not be able to let go. And my body just wasn't ready. And I would probably most likely end up in a cesarean. Yeah. And I know what it's like to heal physically and emotionally and mentally from a planned cesarean and an unplanned one. And they are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I am in no mental or physical shape to have a long induction that we don't know how it's going to go. So let's have a cesarean birth. Now, that's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
But he knew how important it was for me to make that decision myself. And bless this man, he sat there patiently and went through it all and let me process it on my own and make that decision for myself. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes. And he's like, okay, great. Let's go now. So we went over to the hospital together. Yeah. We walked in on a Sunday morning with our OB, and I think the hospital staff was like, labor and delivery was like, what's going on? Like, who is this lady? Right. And we did all the paperwork. We got checked in. We got a room. We went over all of our wants, our needs, our everything for us, for our baby. We had a very frank discussion with the pediatrician on things we didn't want. I actually had to calm you down for a minute because you almost went like full on berserker mode because you were worried that they were going to try to pull one over on us like they did with our 3rd baby in the hospital.
Yeah. It was, I had some PTSD going on. And
yeah, you were pretty upset. And
the rabid guard dog reared his
which
ugly
is
head.
totally fine. I actually asked everyone to leave the room.
Yeah.
And I said, babe, trust me, I have learned from experience. If you need to step up and be a guard dog, I will not stop you this time. I've regretted it every time I have. But wait until there's an actual reason to do it. You're like, okay. I had changed when I went to change into the birth gown. I just was thinking in this hospital bathroom, all these hospital lights, was definitely not a home, environment. And I know I'm getting prepped for surgery and I'm putting on this dumb hospital gown. And I'm thinking everyone's just kind of rushing around, getting their paperwork done, kind of frowns on their faces. And I remember one of my birth affirmations was, don't forget to have a good time. So I came out of the bathroom and I said to the 2 nurses in the room and my friend who was there, and you were there obviously. And I said, I know that this is not what was planned. This was not what we planned for this birth and for this baby, but it's still my baby's birthday. So can we just like smile and have a good time? And the nurses were just like, oh, okay, sure. And it completely changed the energy and the vibe of the entire birth experience.
Really did.
It really did. And so I started getting prepped, to go back into the OR. it's kind of uncomfortable. You know, they're like shaving you and you have to get a catheter and all this stuff. And I'm like, could y'all come to my house on the weekend and do a good job down there? You know, like just, you know, it's so uncomfortable. And it was kind of shocking the whole time because it's almost like in labor, like, you know, you're not sure how it's going to go. And I was just checking off checklists. Like, I've got my IV, they've shaved me, got to do this, got to do that. Like, just going through this mental checklist. And I'm like, I just have to do one step at a time, just one step at a time. And so I got back in the OR and I know how this goes, you know, like they take me back there, they give me a spinal, and then, you know, before you can come in. And I'm sitting on this table thinking, what have I done? Did I make the right decision? What if I made the wrong choice? Am I going to regret this decision? I don't know that I can do this. I do not know that I can do this. I can't do this. And I call this transition in cesarean birth. Like, I felt like I was in transition, this I can't do it kind of panic mode. And that's when my OB walked in, and he walked up to me and he said, "Hey kiddo, how you doing?" And I think it's funny he calls me kiddo because he's only a few years older than us. Yeah. He's like, "Hey kiddo, how you doing?" And I said, at this point, we're on a first name basis. So I called him by his name. I said, "Listen, I need you to tell me that I'm not making the wrong choice." And he said, "January, you are 43 weeks pregnant with your sixth baby, and your baby nudged you that it was time and you listened. You are doing everything just right." Ugh, I just want to clone him. Yeah. And it was just what I needed to hear in that moment. You guys, the way we are spoken to when we are laboring and birthing our babies is so important. It will stick with us, good or bad, forever. Like, I'm pretty sure when I'm like 100 years old, probably naked on the beach with donuts, and someone's like, "Hey, January, like, what did you do last night?" I'd be like, "I don't know. You want a donut?" But if they're like, "Tell me about your births," I'm going to remember that detail. You know? Yeah. It's that important. And we take that into postpartum and motherhood with us, how we're treated, how we're talked to. You can build a woman up to be so empowered during this experience, or you can tear her down. Obviously, we all feel that empowering a woman is the way to go. And that's what he did for me in that moment. But it was funny because a nurse said, "It's okay. It's not like anyone's waiting to hear like how you have this baby." And he's like, "Actually," and I said, "Can we please not talk about BWF? This is about me, not about birth without fear." So we, you know, had a cesarean birth, but some cool stuff about this cesarean birth was, as they were working their way down to baby, we had an ongoing conversation with our OB. And when they got down to, you know, pull her out, literally, she kicked and she kind of shot up my womb away from them. Like, "Wait a minute, not ready." And of course I was numb chest down, but I felt her, you can still feel movement and pressure. And I felt this kind of kicking and movement and pressure way up high where I wasn't as numb as way down low. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. And as they pulled her out, I felt her descending down and out. And the thought in my head was, wow, I just birthed my baby. Yeah, you did. Yeah, I didn't have that experience quite like that with for our first two cesareans. No. And she was born and he laid her on my legs, I think, right away. To check and make sure she's breathing okay. And I think he was really concerned about me, and they had seen a lot of scar tissue, and, you know, I was 36 having a baby and having, you know, major surgery. So right. he forgot to show me my baby. But they had laid her on my leg for a minute or two to not cut the cord right away. And they then cut the cord and handed her off to the pediatric team. In this OR, the pediatric team and the warmer for the baby wasn't where I could see. It was over in the far corner of the room. So I hear our baby crying. I hadn't laid eyes on her. And I'm thinking in my mind, this could cause serious problems for somebody postpartum, and they wouldn't even know why, because there was this disconnect, And so I started saying, I need to see my baby. I need to see my baby. I need to see my baby. And you walked over, right? You walked over to them, and you were standing behind them, and they were of course checking on her, which was fine. We wanted them to check on her, make sure she was healthy, make sure there was no fluid in her lungs. We made it very clear not to take her footprints or do anything else.
Right.
Before I had her. We wanted skin to skin on the OR, breastfeeding. So after a few minutes, you went over there and you were like, what did you say? Are you done yet?
Yeah, I was basically like an annoying kid. I was like, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? She needs to see the baby. Are you done?
I'm sure they loved us.
I was like literally hovering over this one pediatrician's shoulder. And
she probably hated you.
Yeah, I mean, I can be annoying when things are good, but when, the time comes, I think the annoying behavior can work out to my advantage. So these people were working frantically because, are you done? Are you done? She needs to see the baby. Are you done? I
couldn't see her, and you can't move and you're numb, and it's just weird. And they wrapped her up, and the nurse brought her around, but a nurse had remembered what we wanted.
Yeah.
So she took down my gown on my chest to bare my skin, unwrapped our baby, and put us skin to skin.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So yeah, we were skin to skin in the OR, and she wasn't ready to start breastfeeding yet. So we actually didn't breastfeed, and I was really shaky. So after a few minutes of having her skin to skin, I asked you if you could take her because I didn't feel it was safe to hold her anymore.
You also still had the flu.
And then I was having a hard time not coughing. Actually, our OB said, January, can you please try not to cough while I am working on you? I'm like, I'm trying. It was so awful. And anyways, he made sure, he took his time and made sure that everything was good. And after he was done, he came around to face me, and he said, you have some of the most scar tissue I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Ever. Which I'm pretty sure is from my second cesarean birth. And I said, oh yeah? And he said, well, you'll never have bladder prolapse problems, which I think is so funny. It's like OBs think differently, right, than we do. And doctors do. I said, okay, thanks, I think. And he said, it now makes sense why your babies never drop and why you have long labors. He said, your babies have to work through and past so much scar tissue. So I have these really long labors, and then once I hit transition and my babies get past that, my pushing phase is super short. And it was like all of a sudden everything made sense. Now, I would not want a cesarean if I didn't have to have one, and it's major surgery that you have to heal from. But it was also very empowering to have that information, because I thought it was just my body not wanting to birth these babies. There was something wrong with my body, but really he even said, I do not know how you had 3 VBACs with that much scar tissue. And I said, yeah, but I did. And he's like, yeah, you did. Right. So it was great to have that knowledge, and wow, how amazing and badass is my body. Like, it made me respect my body more, that it actually hadn't failed me. It was powerful and strong and capable, The recovery in the hospital, like, we both weren't feeling well. So it was interesting when we were skin to skin with the baby, everyone felt better.
Yeah.
So you and I were taking turns, because when you're skin to skin, like, it literally releases oxytocin. You start bonding. Like, there's a whole science behind it, actually.
Yeah.
And I would get shaky when I wasn't holding her, coming off the drugs from the surgery and not feeling well. We were both on the tail end of not feeling well. And so I'd be like, I need her back. And I put her skin to skin, and she would, be perfectly content there. And my whole body, my temperature, my shaking would just completely regulate and calm down when she was on my chest, skin to skin. And then if she wasn't for a period of time, it went the opposite direction. It was really fascinating.
It was. That day actually was my worst day with the flu. And of course, that's the day we have the baby. And I just felt like absolute shit. I mean, it was horrible. And I held her, like you said, we'd take turns, and we'd take turns holding her for 30 minutes at a time. And I remember we went through 3 cycles of that for about 3 hours we were taking turns. And Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I was just holding her. I didn't have my shirt on, so it was skin to skin for me too. And it was like 30 minutes of relief. Like I felt normal. I felt okay. I didn't feel
and
sick.
For those of you worrying that we were like going to give our baby the flu, we didn't.
No,
she's fine.
Yeah,
basically, she didn't.
Fine.
She did not get the flu. We just did. So she was perfectly safe.
Yeah.
She was perfectly fine. We were in the hospital. There were doctors all around us. Everything was good.
Yeah, when you asked for her back, I was like, no.
I don't want to
I'd hand you back. And within 10 seconds, I'm like, oh, God.
She was like this amazing.
Kill me now.
She was this amazing natural cure. Oh, gosh, I love her.
It was amazing.
We had debated whether or not I stay the night in the hospital, but we have 5 kids at home. So we're going back and forth. And that was really difficult. That was one of the things where I'm like, oh gosh, a home birth would have been amazing.
Been way easier, yeah.
Yeah, and there was the second day. Part of me wanted to stay in the hospital because obviously getting up and moving around is really difficult after a cesarean, and I was exhausted, and just recovering from not feeling well, 43 weeks of pregnancy and surgery. But it was really difficult, you coming back and forth. So we were released early. I got home, got settled in bed, and it was a very long night. And I realized like that wasn't going to work. So we hired a postpartum doula for 3 nights so that you could go into the other room and just sleep and recover from the week. And I could have someone who could hold the baby, watch that she was breathing so I could get some sleep.
Yeah.
And then when she needed to breastfeed, the doula helped me sit up and get her latched on and breastfeed her, and then would take her and help me with her while I would sleep. And then, because you would have been no use to me or the baby or you or the other kids if you weren't getting rest.
Yeah. Well, we did it that first night you were home.
Oh, it was awful.
Oh, gosh. That was so hard.
We were so exhausted. So, yeah, having a postpartum doula just for 3 nights made a huge difference for us. And then after that, we worked our way into our postpartum. And this postpartum I had prepared for more than my others just because simply it was my 6th baby. And I was like, why the heck wouldn't I do that for myself?
Wisdom.
And especially we were in a 2-story house and I had a C-section. So luckily our bedroom at the time where we were living was really big. So there was a couch and TV. I put a mini fridge in there. I mean, it was like the life. And
nice
had
setup.
Snacks, and I had a really nice setup, and we had planned for me to have a few weeks off from traveling and doing events and stuff, and it was a really great few months there with the beginning of the postpartum as I healed. It took me longer to heal from the cesarean than with my first 2. I was a lot older. I had this as my 6th baby. It just is what it freaking is.
Yeah.
And I had with my first, especially our first baby in cesarean, I was barely on the pain meds at all after. But with this baby, I was like, oh my gosh. I was texting my friend who had 3 cesarean births. I'm like, how long were you taking these pain meds for? She's like, oh, a while. I was like, okay, so it's not just me, and
yeah, definitely not just you.
Right. So it was after having this baby that I was getting migraines, and from eating meat and dairy was giving me intestinal issues, and that kind of pushed me into a vegan diet that postpartum. So and we'll talk about that later, but a lot of different things happened. But it was really amazing for me because I had 2 cesareans, 3 VBACs, which you guys have all heard. All 6 of our birth experiences have been different, all of them, and I've had great cesarean births and a bad cesarean birth. And I've had good vaginal births and bad vaginal birth experiences. And it really depended big time on where I was at in my life, where I was at mentally, the support I had or did not have around me. And honestly, the position of the baby plays a big role.
Oh, yeah.
So all these factors that I learned played a big role. So this cesarean birth in a way was a healing birth. And when I shared about her birth, I didn't want people to be like, oh, you had a C-section. I'm so sorry. Because it was her birth. And I was completely supported by my midwives and my OB. And even postpartum, my midwives continued doing postpartum care with me beautifully. I was so grateful for that. And I had options, and my providers completely respected me and my choices. And it was not a traumatic experience. No, did I want surgery? No. And so that's how, but it wasn't a bad experience. And so when I shared the announcement that we had her, it was to say, this is her birth experience. And yes, I had 3 VBACs that I fought for, but I was respected and supported. I had options and I was loved. And this is just how she needed to be born for us both to be healthy, mentally and physically, and safe. And that's okay. That's okay too. You know, and this is how my journey in pregnancy and births in this leg of motherhood for me was supposed to go. This is how it was. And my births went full circle. You know, like I feel like my journey in pregnancy and births went completely full circle. And to have the knowledge that I received from my OB this last time for me was really amazing and really important. So that is our 6th. That sums up our 6 birth experiences.
Yeah, that's 6.
You know, with our babies. And did you have anything that you wanted to add? I know I talked most of the time sharing this birth experience, but was there anything that I missed or anything that you wanted to add?
No, you covered pretty much all of it. I mean, there's not much else to add. She's a cute kid.
She was meant to be here. That's for sure. And
she's in that hell toddler phase right now, though. Good Lord.
But her base level of happy is so high. It's just such an incredible joy to be around her.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never forget the first time she smiled at you at a couple days old. Like, she's just, she's been smiling since she's been born, you know, and she's something special. So
yeah, she's super cute.
I would love to share more about postpartums and about our, you know, veganism. And also I want to do a podcast about my gallbladder, because I didn't know that having babies and pregnancies really is a high risk for gallbladder issues. And I've been dealing with that since having our 6th baby. So there's a lot of other things that I would love to discuss. But for now, that is our 6th birth experience with Beard Baby. And now you can listen to all 6 of them.
You can.
So I don't have to keep telling them.
When are we going to have baby number 7?
Never. We are closed for business.
Yes. We are closed.
So happy.
We're closed and snipped and cauterized.
Stop it. Like, closed for business wasn't enough. You had to like give details. That's just super.
Super duper.
All right, you guys. Thanks for listening. I hope that you found some inspiration or solidarity or just amusement from this podcast, and we'll have more soon.
Yep. Until next time.
Bye, guys.
Adios.